Welcome to this episode. I am Damaris, and our topic today is emotions. So, what is emotion? Emotion is the immediate psychological response to perceived stimulus. Chemicals that are released throughout our body, and they last about 6 seconds. Now, just to give a differentiation, we'd also like to give a definition of what feelings are. Feelings are the physical and mental sensations that arise as we internalize emotions. Feelings are cognitively saturated emotional chemicals.
Great, thanks for those definitions. And we just felt that it was important to put the two together because oftentimes we use emotions and feelings in the same way. So in the context of this episode, when we're looking at emotions and feelings, emotion is the strong feeling related to or coming from the situation you're in or the people that you're with. Now, there's a psychologist called Robert Plutchik who gives 8 basic and universal emotions, and they are joy and sadness, acceptance and disgust, fear and anger, surprise and anticipation. Emotions and feelings help us to focus our attention and to motivate us to act or react. Importantly, if emotions are left unchecked, they can intensify. So, looking at emotions and feelings, Dama, what does it mean to you today?
So just for clarity, I think in this conversation, we're going to pretty much interchange emotions and feelings.
Yeah.
But it's good that we gave those definitions at the beginning.
Yeah.
So for me, emotions are feedback. Feedback, my being giving me feedback on what could be wrong, what could be right, what I need to change. It could be a question of, what I need to change or what I need to remove myself from, what situation I need to remove myself from, or what situations I need to accept. So it's about being able to listen to my body's feedback to me.
Yeah.
What about you?
Same thing. They're like a gauge or like a guidance system on how I'm doing. Like you say, how I feel about a situation or the people I'm with and what's happening for me at that point in time. So I think, they're an important gauge. And oftentimes, emotions for me also show me, especially if it's a negative emotion like an anger or a frustration, especially like an anger, then I know that something important to me, like a value, has been stepped on, or something has gone wrong. And therefore the emotions tell me that I need to do something about it, either walk away from it or address it. So same thing like you. Today I use emotions or I see emotions and my feelings as something that tells me how I'm doing.
Yeah. And is this how you thought, what you believed emotions to be when you were younger?
No. I don't think I actually gave them that much thought. I just knew that I had them. And I think, growing up, there wasn't much about, showing your emotion or expressing or talking about, I guess that would be the better way to put it, talking about how you're feeling about a situation or how you're feeling about something. Expressing emotions and feelings was not really done, when I was younger. So there was a lot of, I did a lot of bottling up emotion or feeling and keeping it to myself. I didn't really see it as a gauge to how I was feeling there and then. It was more just a reaction, but then no further thinking about that reaction and then trying to keep it to myself. Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, the same.
Yeah.
I didn't place that much value on how I felt. Therefore, I didn't really value emotions per se. Like you, I understood that there was anger, there was happiness, there was pain, there was sadness, but I didn't really understand the deeper emotions beyond that.
Yeah.
And again, I was not allowed to really express them. Maybe anger you could express and happiness you could express. It's like the spectrum was very limited when I was younger.
Yeah.
You're either happy or sad, and not really look at the emotion behind those emotions.
Yeah.
And of course, happiness was the more accepted emotion.
True.
Because then it makes everybody comfortable.
Yeah.
If you're angry, you can make people uncomfortable, so you're not really allowed to be angry. So that's how I understood emotions to be these things that you bottle up and you keep inside of yourself, and not express them, because expressing your emotions would mean making other people uncomfortable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. I remember when I was younger, I in the same vein, because it was, in the same way, keeping your emotions to yourself or bottled up. I really used to struggle with people who would have emotional outbursts or would want to talk about their feelings, and even with a friend in high school, for example, and you hurt your friend's feelings and they wanted to have a conversation about it. I really struggled. Yeah, it was very, very uncomfortable because it was something I wasn't comfortable doing.
Yeah.
And so my reaction at that time when I was younger to those conversations was literally to pull away, whereas now it's very different, because it's about, trying to understand where they're coming from. Yeah, but when I was younger, that wasn't the case.
It was almost like a show of weakness.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was very much tied to if you show your emotions, then you're being weak. Except for when you're angry, then you're just being aggressive and unpleasant.
Exactly,
right?
Exactly. And I think, just looking at it, when you say the show of weakness, I think particularly as women, there's always that, you're so emotional, you're being dramatic, which I think is pretty negative and ridiculous, because everyone has emotions and feelings. And when you're younger, or when I was younger, being expressive about your emotions was, like you said, unnecessarily drawing people into your problems, or making your problems public to everyone. And, it was really that thing of keep your business to yourself, But it didn't really help, because you don't really address what it is, be it a situation or a person that wronged you, or even pay attention to the things that are making you happy or bringing you joy, so that you can do those things more in your life.
Exactly. Yeah.
You just knew you were happy, and then the next day you were not as happy, but you don't really remember what it was that made you happy. Yeah. So when you look back at your understanding of emotions and feelings as it is today, we talked about it being a guidance system, and a gauge or a feedback mechanism, versus before, what misconceptions do you think you've come across around emotions?
So firstly, it just goes back to what we talked about. I used to think that emotions were a show of weakness, which I've grown to now understand that absolutely showing your emotions is part of the human journey. It's like you're hiding a part of who you are when you hide your emotions. That's the first thing I've learned. The second thing I've learned is that emotions are also very personal, in the sense that there's a quote I love. It goes something like, we don't see the world the way it is, we see the world the way we are. So just because something has angered or upset me does not mean it should anger or upset other people. It's angering and upsetting me because of my life experiences, of my general perceptions, my education, my upbringing. So all of those things come together and form my reactions in different situations.
Yeah.
And so because my life experiences are very different from yours, for instance, something that could potentially upset me does not necessarily have to upset you. And that's one thing I've learned, a misconception I had, that if I'm angry, other people should also be angry, you know. But that's not true at all. So now I have learned that it's emotions are personal and they're sacred almost in that respect, because then it's when you feel outrage in a situation, you're allowed to feel outraged by that situation, regardless of how other people view that situation, because you're coming from your own viewpoints and perceptions and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So not to judge too harshly, to judge my emotions too harshly, or even underrate them for that matter.
Yeah, I think especially the underrating part strikes a chord for me, and I think agreeing totally with what you said and having a lot more attention to how I'm feeling and what emotions I'm feeling and stuff like that has been a misconception. You know, trying to bottle the feelings when actually at the end of the day, if you keep something bottled up for too long, it will find a way out somehow. Yeah. You know, and being able to manage your emotions because you talk about them or you let them out is how you healthily manage them, so that you're not having those explosive outbursts or etc. And I think to your point that you were saying about respecting that emotions and feelings are, you know, how a person on their own interprets their feelings and emotions. It's not necessarily a collective. You know, if I'm super happy, doesn't mean everybody is supposed to be super happy and giddy like I am. Yeah. You know, and I guess to that point, also how we express the emotion has become important, because I think, you know, as much as we should express emotion, and it's important that we do, or feelings, how we do it is also important. You know, so if, for example, I'm angry with you, how I express how I'm feeling is important, and not, it's important for me at least that I manage how I'm communicating that anger. Yeah. The idea is not to have like a mega outlash that then is very hurtful or aggressive to you, and you're not understanding where. Yeah. So I think how you express your emotions has been a misconception. You know, I think people just feel I'm angry, so I'll be angry, and everybody should know that I'm angry about this, or everybody should know that I'm ridiculously happy about this. Right. Yeah. How we communicate that or express that with each other, I think, is also important as a society. So the how has been, or the lack of considering how to express was a misconception for me. I think that would be my biggest misconception.
Would you tie that also to a key lesson that you've now learned from your an experience, from all your experiences with your emotions?
Yeah, I think because emotion and feeling have become a way for me to gauge how I'm doing, I'm a lot more conscious of the situations I'm in and the people that I'm with. And I make a conscious choice. You know, if something is uncomfortable for me, the conscious choice is either to be aware that it's uncomfortable and then decide whether I'm going to continue staying or whether I'm going to walk away from it. Yeah, and the same with people, because I think in my experience, I know that there's some people I've interacted with who are just, you know, aggressive, moody, angry, negative all the time. And emotions and feelings of other people do influence us. Yeah, so that understanding, because I don't want to be in that space all the time. I don't want that to be a constant feeling that I'm having of that negativity or that aggression or that. So I'll avoid people like that. Mm-hmm. You know, the Desiderata says, where is it? It says something around, keep away of aggressive and loud people. They are vexatious to the spirit, because I think emotions, it's easy for us to pass on emotion and feeling to each other. Oh, yeah. So we also have to be conscious about how we express ourselves and how we are with other people, because, there's the baggage dumpers, the emotional dumpers who come and give you all their emotional problems and dramas, not looking for a solution, but then suddenly they feel better, and once in a while that's okay. But on a constant level, that in turn starts to make you feel depressed or you feel bad. So I think emotion is an important gauge for things like that. Yeah. And that would be a key lesson. Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, that's actually, I hadn't thought about it, but that's definitely a key lesson for me as well. And once I did learn that, I have tended to avoid certain people, the baggage dumpers, as you call them. But also I've realized that many of these people, there's what I referred to earlier as the emotion behind the emotion. Mm-hmm. So there's these standard emotions, which are anger, happiness, the ones you've listed earlier, surprise, anticipation. But then I've learned that behind that anger, there's another, it veils another emotion. Maybe it's hurt, angry people, they say hurt people.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's not just the anger. The anger is just on the surface. But if you dig deeper, you'll find that maybe this person is really hurting. And as a result, they want to hurt other people, or they want to dump their hurt on you. When you go to feelings like jealousy, it's a question of maybe you feeling that you're not good enough. So on the surface, it manifests as jealousy. Yeah. But if you look deeper, you'll see that you feel inadequate, and all these, so all these surface emotions that come out really clearly and usually negatively, they're veiling some kind of hidden vulnerability, which, I'm not a therapist, but I think for when you do go through such emotions, it would be worth talking to somebody and finding out, why are you always angry? Why are you always talking about people? Why are you so jealous of people? And that's definitely another key lesson for me in my whole emotional journey, so to speak.
I think that's a really great point, that there's what's on the surface and then there's what's actually behind. And I'm actually going to give an example of you and I, because you've made me think about it now. I remember we were talking a few weeks ago about some of the fantastic opportunities that are coming towards you from a business perspective, and I was genuinely really excited. And then I said to you, I actually almost feel jealous. But as we're discussing this now, the emotion behind that feeling of jealousy is a sense of insecurity, is a sense of, am I good enough to be able to achieve things like Damaris is achieving, So the feeling of jealousy, or that sense of jealousy, wasn't actually envying you in that way. It was actually my own insecurity of, in my own business journey, will I get to that point where I have those kind of opportunities? And I use that example because I think it hadn't occurred to me until we started talking just now about the emotion, or the emotion behind the feeling, and where does it actually come from. And again, to me, that just emphasizes the importance of understanding your feelings and emotions, because they're telling you something. Yeah. And it's not always just what you think it is on the surface. If you go a little bit further, you can look for the source of where that feeling is coming from.
Yeah.
And then when you have that understanding, then you don't feel so bad. Like now I'm like, whew, okay.
Yeah.
I'm not envying or hating on my friend. It's actually me who's insecure about whether in a few years' time I can, I can have the opportunities you do, which is a good thing.
Yeah,
but now I understand it.
Yeah.
Now I understand it. So thank you for giving that example now about, going further back into the emotion.
Yeah.
Because I think that's an important one.
But just to set the record straight, I think my entrepreneurial journey has started a while ago, and I did go through similar experiences or emotional turmoil where I'd see people who are slightly ahead, and I'd be like, will I ever? When will I ever? And then sometimes you just feel like, oh, should I even try?
Yeah.
So I think it's a very natural and normal emotion to have. And I love that when you're aware of it, it puts you in a very different position. It's almost an empowering, a position of feeling empowered, because now you're like, okay, so this is the issue. Now, how do I address the core issue?
Exactly.
Instead of looking at the superficial and feeling bad about it.
Yeah.
Because then you can really guilt trip yourself and think, I'm not a good person. But when you look deeper and you find the answers, they're so much more bearable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then that kind of brings me to another point I had about being able to be vulnerable. So I think vulnerability is a superpower, because when we do hide the emotion behind the emotion, we're not being vulnerable.
Yeah.
We're not being honest with ourselves. But when we can allow ourselves to be vulnerable to ourselves and even to other people and tell them that I feel this way in a very open and safe and authentic manner, it almost gives other people permission to also be vulnerable, and it's such an empowering place, because then you're opening yourself up. Of course, you have to be careful in the kinds of spaces you're opening yourself up in, but it's so important to be vulnerable to that extent where you're being honest with yourself and with other people. And that actually empowers the other people to also be vulnerable. Because I don't think anybody in this world can say that they have everything right, that they're perfect.
True.
But if you talk to me about something that you're feeling, I also go to myself, just what's happened just now, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You go into yourself and then you figure something out, and then you can also voice it. So you kind of help each other out in that sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. So I have a quick fire question for you.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of talk, and the reason I'm asking you as well is because I know you do a video podcast with a therapist for your company Kazini with a Q. And you were talking about emotional quotient. Yeah. So, and it's something that's coming up, emotional intelligence, emotional quotient. What is that? Because I think it ties into what we're talking about today with emotions and feelings.
Yeah. So what I now understand it to be, it's a part of our humanness. So there's intelligence quotient. I can never get these words right. The quotient or quotient, which we have basically focused on a lot.
Yeah.
It's always about IQ, people's IQ. People are, the value of somebody is tied to their IQ at the expense of all these other aspects that are still as important, which is EQ, emotional quotient, SPQ, your social quotient, No, SPQ is spiritual quotient.
Yeah.
Then there's SQ, which is your social quotient. So all of these things come together to make us who we are and, help us in the way we make decisions and how we relate to other people. So the emotional quotient part of it is really what we're talking about, honoring that vulnerable and human side of ourselves, whether we're at work, because you don't just have it with your partner at home or with your kids and then leave it when you go to work. If you look at companies more and more today, I think EQ has never been so important for leaders. It's not so much about do as I say. It's about having compassion and listening to people and working as teams and that kind of thing. So EQ, in summary, I'd say it's a vital part of us as humans that we need to focus on as much as we focus on how clever we are. It's a different kind of cleverness. Yeah. Not competing with IQ, but on the same level. Yeah. Does that answer the question?
It does, because I think also emotions and feelings can define a lot of the decisions and actions we take. So having a good understanding of why you're feeling the way you're feeling or how you're feeling is important, because then you understand whether you're taking the right decisions or not. People can always say, don't take emotion and feeling into the office or into your workplace. I think that's not true, because even from the definition, it's a fundamental physiological reaction.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's your body that's telling you something. Yeah. So you can't pretend that it doesn't happen to you in every situation, whether you're at work, whether you're at home, whether you're with your friends. You have emotions, therefore your body is telling you something. And based on what your body is telling you, then you act, react, or you decide or choose something. And understanding where that emotion or feeling is coming from is then where it's important. Because, often people can take a decision or say, I don't like this person, or I don't like this situation, or I'm not having favorites, or stuff like that. We all do. And understanding where that comes from then helps you to know whether you're taking the decision or the action in the right way. You're not just triggered. You're not just reacting without thinking. The emotion is a feedback mechanism to tell you something is good or feeling right or not right. And then you can ask yourself, why is it not feeling right? Yeah. Is it that particular individual, or did they say something that upset you because someone had done something similar to you before in the past? Yeah. So it affects you in a way that upsets you, but that's not what the person intended. They just said it. They just said something, but it wasn't to, stir up the past thing that you had. And I think that's where emotion and feeling is important, to telling you something's not feeling right in this situation, but then you have to figure out what that is.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I can say that every time I've listened to my emotions, or I'll even dare say intuition, which I think is very much tied to emotions.
Yeah.
It's led me in the right place. And when I disregard that, I've landed in quite a bit of trouble because of ignoring that part of me that's telling me that I either need to address something or walk away from a situation, or look at it like, evaluate, why is it affecting me this way?
Correct.
Yeah.
So looking at that all and everything that we've been talking about, when it comes to emotions and feelings, knowing what you know now, Are there things you feel that you could have done differently? Or, what could you have told your younger self about emotions and feelings?
Yeah. My younger self, I would tell myself, Damaris, dear Damaris, it's okay to feel the way you're feeling. There is nothing wrong with feeling the way you are feeling. Like you said, it comes back to how you then express it. If you're angry, you're allowed to be angry. But then how do you express that anger? But don't suppress those feelings for the sake of making other people uncomfortable. It goes back to a movie I watched with my daughter a couple of years ago. It's called Inside Out. I don't know if you've watched it.
Long ago.
Inside Out.
Yeah.
Yeah?
What's it about? Please remind me.
So with this girl, and she, I think her parents move away from a town, then they move to a different town. And then in that town, she's kind of isolated. She has to move to a new school. And then the movie focuses on her different emotions. The different emotions that she goes through in that whole experience. So there's anger, there's joy, there's sadness, there's disgust, and I can't remember all of them. But all these emotions are playing characters in the movie. And what she's trying to do, or has been conditioned to do, is to focus on the joy. So joy is always comes and makes everything well and is always happy and upbeat and optimistic, and then she kind of suppresses all the other emotions because the joy is the one that's kind of celebrated and everybody wants to be around joy. Yeah. But then an incident happens in her life where sadness comes in, and she has to face that sadness and accept that sadness. And so how this ties into the key lessons that I've learned is that it's okay to be sad. It's okay to experience those emotions. It's just how you project them or manage them that matters. But it's really okay. I tell my younger self that it's okay. Feel those emotions because they're important and they're telling you something that you need to probably look at.
Yeah. That's the same thing for me. I think if I was to give some advice to my younger self, would be about it's okay to express your emotions, and it's okay to feel the emotion, and to try and understand where they're coming from. Just on the one of sadness, for example, and we were having this conversation a few weeks ago. We talk a lot, but about death, and I've lost my parents and brother over the past few years. And the thing that always struck me is how people say, it will be well. At that particular time, and I know death is a very difficult thing to go through, not just for the people going through it, but also for those around them, the friends. What do you say? What do you do? Etc. Can be very challenging, and it can be an awkward time for everyone because of that. But it is important, just to that point about feeling the sadness and feeling the moments of joy or laughter that happen even during that time. Because to be well, at the end of it all, you need to have gone through those emotions that will be happening to you. And I think if you suppress those feelings, like you talked about the sadness, and even maybe if it's an anger, or feel bad that you can't laugh in a difficult in a difficult situation, you're not helping yourself to get to that point of it will be well. It may not be well at that particular time when people are saying it, but it will be eventually if you permit yourself to feel those emotions and feelings, and to understand them, because they're really there to tell you about how you're doing. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Oof. Okay.
Are you feeling emotional? What are you feeling right now? That's my quick fire, I guess. I've just thought of one.
Relief. Because it's not an easy topic, I think.
Yeah.
You know, it's not something that... and it's not to say the other topics were easier, but it's really about something that we don't often easily talk about, you know, as a conversation. We can express to each other how we're feeling or the emotions that are going on, but not really analyzing how that has changed in our lives, you know. So there's a, wow, okay. We got to the end, and we've covered it in the best way we can for the time we have. Because it's an intense topic to cover,
and it doesn't help that we've been raised not to address our emotions. So, but I think the older we become, the more we demystify
exactly
these things. It's actually very normal, you know.
That's the thing.
It shouldn't even be difficult.
It shouldn't be difficult. It should be okay to talk about them. So this is our ongoing steps
Absolutely.
and what we're learning.
Okay, so we're going to wrap up this episode. Thanks so much for listening, and we hope you enjoyed this conversation. Do listen to our other episodes, and if you like this podcast, tell your friends about it.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us, and until next time, bye.
Bye-bye.